We are weeks away from the postseason, and wrestling action is not slowing down. In this video, we'll talk about how Nebraska gave Penn State their toughest match of the year and all the controversy that came with it. Plus, I'm really starting to have some concerns about Vito Arujua and his ability to repeat as a national champ. Plus, we're going to discuss a few wrestlers that aren't going to get very good seeds at the national tournament, but could really bust the bracket wide open. But first, I want to start out where the weekend started, with NC State versus Cornell. This was supposed to be a top 10 matchup, but unfortunately, Cornell wasn't at full strength. But it started out with a fire match of Jacob Camacho versus Brett Unger. Jacob Camacho ended up getting a convincing win over Brett Unger, and Jacob Camacho is one of those guys who, well, he's not going to get a very good seed at the national tournament. Now, to be fair, he has to wrestle Cooper Flynn next week versus Virginia Tech and potentially again at the ACC tournament. If he gets both of those wins, maybe he could be a number 8 seed or a number 9 seed, but I really don't see him getting higher than that 8th seed spot. So with him rounding into form right now at the end of the season, that could be trouble for anyone on the opposite side of the bracket as him. And we thought we were going to get a top 5 matchup at 133 pounds with Kai Orini and Vito Arujua.
You thought wrong!
But Vito Arujua didn't wrestle. Nor did he wrestle versus App State on Sunday. So I don't know about you, but for me, that makes me a little concerned about his health and what he can do come the NCAA tournament. When he does step on the mat, he's looked fine and looked really good, but he's been so in and out of the lineup this year, it really makes me question, can he really sustain a brutal tournament like the NCAA tournament over the course of 3 days? I'm not making any predictions right now, but it's certainly something to consider when you're predicting who's going to win that 133-pound weight class. And then at 157 pounds, Myra Shapiro passes yet another test and beats Ed Scott. But maybe the most notable result of this duel was Dylan Fishback beating Chris Foca. The same Chris Foca that beat Makai Lewis and placed 3rd last year at the NCAA tournament. So while Dylan Fishback has taken a couple losses to Reese Heller and Jaden Bullock, he also has some really high quality wins over Trey Munoz and now Chris Foca. And while it's not uncommon for some wrestlers to have up and down results, there are a few unique wrestlers that really seem to be just on a roller coaster throughout the season. I named one earlier in Jacob Camacho, but there are a few other wrestlers where if you see their name opposite you in the bracket at the NCAA tournament, you're getting nervous. And number 1 on that list is no other than Cole Matthews, who started out the year pretty bad. He has 9 losses on the year so far, and multiple losses to wrestlers who aren't going to qualify for the national tournament. Those are some pretty bad losses. But he's really turned it on over the past few weeks, getting wins over Ryan Jack and Lachlan McNeil, both top 5 wins, and then this past week, pinning Tom Crook of Virginia Tech, with which Matt Scouts responded on Twitter saying, really enjoyed Cole Matthews trolling us for the past 2 months. So if you end up earning the 3 seed at the national tournament at 141 pounds, and you see Cole Matthews as the number 14th seed that you have to get in the 2nd round, sorry, but that is a bad draw.
That's seriously a real bummer.
And then the next wrestler on the list is Ryder Rogotsky of Ohio State. He has 15 wins on the season, and 13 of those wins are by pin. 13 wins by pin. That is just nutso to me.
That is crazy.
But again, he has some losses on the year to guys who won't qualify for the national tournament or will be right on the edge of qualifying. But then again, he has wins over Bernie Truax of Penn State. And then this last week, he pinned number 14, Lane Malchewski. So he's not going to be a super high seed at the national tournament, but you better be ready to wrestle because he's looking for a pin. And then 3rd on my list, maybe a surprise to nobody, is Patrick McKee. He has losses on the year to Tanner Jordan and Dean Peterson, not bad losses, but guys ranked in the 20s. But then this past week, he gets a pin over number 3 ranked Eric Barnett. So no matter where these guys are seated in the bracket, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on each of them because they could just blow these brackets wide open. I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, so hit the subscribe button. Help me get there.
Hit the subscribe button.
Now there's a couple of individual matches that I want to talk about before we talk about that Penn State-Nebraska duel. And the first is Dean Hamidi versus Mikey Caliendo. And let me just say, what a fantastic match. I mean, round of applause to these guys for really laying it out on the line. I mean, if every college wrestler wrestled like these two guys, and this match was normal on the college wrestling scene, the fan base would literally double in a matter of 5 years. Highly entertaining match. Highly suggest you go watch it. And it really reminded me, I really should have been talking about Dean Hamidi more throughout the season, but unfortunately I haven't talked about him that much, mostly because Wisconsin is not very good this year outside of Dean Hamidi and Eric Barnett. But I am very intrigued by a Hamidi-Messenbreet match that we could see in the Big Ten Finals. And then South Dakota State wrestles Missouri. Really tough. I've said it many times, South Dakota State, Damian Hahn, they are a sneaky good program. But I want to talk about Cade DeVos. He beats an All-American Peyton Mako 5-0. I wouldn't be surprised if Cade DeVos, if the bracket comes out in his favor, he might have an opportunity to make the finals here opposite of Carter Starachi. All right, so let's talk about Penn State versus Nebraska. And I just want to say, what an exciting, fun duel. This was a really fun duel. Every single match, I was pretty entertained all the way through. And Nebraska definitely came in expecting to win this match. Their plan was to beat Penn State. And we started off the duel with, at 125 pounds, with Caleb Smith beating Braden Davis, and not just beating him, but getting a major decision. And this is how you know Nebraska was expecting to win the duel or doing what it took to win the duel. Because with only 20 seconds left in the match, when Caleb Smith has a clear advantage, he picks neutral instead of trying to ride out Braden Davis to go after that major. So Nebraska was thinking bonus points. If you're going to beat Penn State, you're going to have to beat them with bonus points because you're not likely going to win 6 matches. You're going to have to split 5-5 with them. And beating them in bonus points is almost impossible because you have Carter Starachi and Aaron Brooks and Greg Kurtvliet to deal with. So they were trying to get bonus points where they could get them. So Nebraska came in ready to wrestle, ready to try to win this duel. And the reality is that's how it should be. Every team and every wrestler should come in believing and expecting to win the match. All right, 141 pounds, the controversy. So Bo Bartlett comes out to a pretty strong lead, up 2 takedowns to none. And then Brock Hardy gets a takedown in the third to pull it within 2 points. And with about 40 seconds left, Brock Hardy gets in on a leg on Bo Bartlett. There's somewhat of a scramble slash a longer wrestling exchange. And then there's a roll through, and then right before Brock Hardy is about to get a takedown, the ref blows the whistle and calls potentially dangerous. Now, I've watched this roll through, this exchange, probably 10 to 15 times, and for the life of me, I can't figure out what the ref was looking at. I don't see anything that was potentially dangerous. The only thing you could maybe say is Bo Bartlett does wince or have a grimace on his face, and so maybe the ref stops it for that reason. But I'll be honest, I see wrestlers wince and grimace a lot in wrestling matches, and the refs don't stop it. I mean, it's a tough sport. Sometimes things are going to hurt out there. So that's a little bit strange to me. But Jordan Burroughs came out on Twitter after the match and said this: "Justice for Brock Hardy." Now, granted, Jordan Burroughs is a Nebraska Cornhusker. That's where he went to college. So obviously he's going to be pulling for Brock Hardy in that situation. But then Matt Scout tweeted this: "It was horrendous. Second angle clearly showed how absolutely asinine it was. At this point, refs can literally influence a match at any time. Now, I will give the disclaimer, there's no guarantee that Brock Hardy is going to ride out Bo Bartlett for the next 25 seconds or even win the match if it goes to overtime. But I do think Brock Hardy probably should have been awarded that takedown and the match should have continued, because at that point Brock Hardy's up by a point and he gives himself a chance to win the match. So whether you're a Penn State fan, Nebraska fan, or just a wrestling fan, I think we all can agree that we want to see the winner decided with wrestling, not with well-timed potential dangerous calls or stalling or any other ref-influenced decision. We want the better wrestler to win the match, and I don't think Brock Hardy got a fair shake at that, but we will get to see this match again at Big Tens and probably in the semifinals or quarterfinals at the national tournament. At 149 pounds, all I really have to say about Kasak is he's freaking tough. He might not get on the podium this year. It's going to be close, but regardless, he has a really, really bright future in his next years in college wrestling. And then at 157 pounds, Peyton Robb versus Levi Haynes. And when I watched this match, I just kept thinking, Levi Haynes, every time he shoots, is getting so deep on Peyton Robb's legs. So as I watched the match, I just kept thinking to myself, it's really just a matter of time before Levi Haynes gets a takedown. Because while Peyton Robb is pretty good at managing that waterfall position that he was in so often, it's an advantage for Levi Haynes or the wrestler in the attacking position. And there were some people that were upset about the danger call. I'm not one of those. I do think he was in danger for 3 seconds. So in my opinion, the ref made the right call there. That should have been a 3-point takedown like it was called on the mat. And then at 184 pounds, Lenny Pinto is freaking strong and powerful. When he shoots, it really does look like a bowling ball is just flying at the other wrestler. But he almost gave this match away. He's winning with 10 seconds to go, and he just stops wrestling for some weird reason. He's looking at the clock. He's just hoping Bernie Truax doesn't try to win the wrestling match, and he almost gives up a takedown. He turns it back on with like 3 seconds left to try to save the position and not give up the takedown, which he ultimately does. But you gotta wrestle till the final second. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Parker Keckeisen is a clear favorite at 184 pounds. But Lenny Pinto, he's one of those 184 pounders that I think, again, could make the finals if he's opposite Parker Keckeisen. Because 184 pounds along with 157 pounds are very similar to 125 pounds. 125 is the most wide open, crazy weight class, but 184 and 157, there is a lot of depth in these weight classes. There's a clear favorite at 184 with Parker and at 157 with Levi Haynes, but after that, you could probably see anywhere from 6 to 10 guys really make the finals on the other side. Huge week of wrestling next week. We have Keegan O'Toole versus David Carr, Iowa State versus Missouri, NC State wrestles Virginia Tech, and then the Iowa Hawkeyes wrestle Oklahoma State. Don't miss it. Subscribe.